Hey everyone, Dr. Frunkey here with an interesting new knife consult for you on the Three Rivers Manufacturing Thunderbird. This is an interesting new offering from our friends over at Three Rivers Manufacturing. Three Rivers Manufacturing has gained some recent popularity for some successful knives like the Viator. That was a slip joint that was well received. They've just released a Neutron, which is a locking version of that. You may recall that on my very channel, I've had a few of the Three Rivers products. I actually had the Bob Terzula collaborative effort with them, but that was not under the Three Rivers sort of moniker. That was more under the Terzula name, and it happened to be made by these folks. Halpern Titanium, the parent company, is a mom-and-pop organization that has a milling production facility where they can mill different metals and create things for various industries, and they do that, but now they create knives. This is probably the highest end of their offering. This is the Thunderbird. This one is an interesting knife that shows off their milling capabilities and is a very unique design idea from within their own company. So what I wanted to do is show this to you guys. I wanted to say thank you so much to Marianne Halpern. She is sort of the social media face of the company, and she sent this knife to me for review. I do not own this knife. It is not for sale, but if you are interested in picking one of these up, they are available for $350 on their website right now. They are currently in stock. So go and check those out. They have different finishes, and we'll talk about all that. What you are getting is a 3.3-inch blade, from what I'm measuring right here, about 3.3 inches back to the handle of a very interesting Wharncliffe style shape. 3.75 back to the pivot. You're looking at just under 8 inches of overall length back to those tail fins, and we'll talk about those as well. The handle is measuring about 4.5 inches, and your grip area is effectively 4 inches right there. These interestingly milled handles right here are actually coming in at a rather thin 0.52. I was expecting them to be much thicker, and the blade stock is 136 thousandths on this guy. On the website, it read 135, so that's probably closer to reality. So let's bring out another couple of knives for a size comparison. This is the Spyderco Paramilitary 2. And here is the Para 3, so you can see that the Thunderbird slots right in between these two knives. So it's a nice EDC size overall. All this metal, all this titanium and milled and everything like this, the handles that are all milled, I just can't talk right now, is coming in at 4.73 ounces. So it stays under 5 ounces with all this metal that's showing right there. That's pretty good. But it is certainly not going to be the lightest knife coming in at this size range. Now, it is extensively internally milled, and we will talk about that as we get to the handle. So let's break this knife down anatomically and see what we're looking at. Up front is this modified Wharncliffe blade done in LMAX steel. Actually, you can see that they've written that here on the back. They've engraved it there. So this is numbered number 11. This is actually the personal knife of the owner of the company. They sent this one along for me to review, so I'm anxious to get it back to him so that he can continue to use it. This is his EDC knife. So again, this blade, 3.3 inches done in LMAX steel, is very, very sharp. And I think that it accomplishes two things that some Wharncliffes don't do as well. This has a very fine tip, so it has this tapering swedge, but it also comes to a very fine tip, but it also has that profile of the Wharncliffe as sort of a downward sloping swedge, but it also allows you to keep the belly rather flat. Now, this is not a totally flat Wharncliffe. Some Wharncliffe blade shapes are just 100% flat. This one has a tiny bit of curve to it. So it's a very interesting take, and it's certainly a blade shape that I don't think I'm familiar with. What it really does is it provides a large thumb ramp up top for your finger to sit on if you're holding it in this position. What it also allows is a comfortable reach over position just like this so that you can do draw cuts. The jury is kind of out on this blade shape for me. I'm not sure that this really solves a problem that was out there. It sort of compromises for me maybe both the drop point and the Wharncliffe aspects of a knife. I really wish it was kind of one or the other. I will say it's not an unuseful blade shape, but I don't know that it really solves a problem. And in terms of the flow of the lines with the rest of the knife, you really have to love it. This is really a face that you have to love. And so it's something that may not be to my personal taste, but it is a nicely done blade. You can see the top swedge right here. It is a flat grind that only comes up to about halfway through. The edge bevel is rather large, which means that it is going to be a very sharp edge, but you can see that the primary bevel is going to be not a very aggressive grind right there, so it's a rather large edge bevel. Moving back to the pivot, this runs on steel caged ball bearings, and the action is very smooth. This is a relatively new knife, and so it's going to take some time for it to break in, but the action is quite smooth. The blade is not very heavy, and so I can shake it closed. You can feel a very smooth and consistent, almost hydraulic action to it. I do like that very much. It is not a free-falling, drop-shutty kind of an affair here, but it is a very consistent and smooth action. The detent is very nice. It allows the blade to deploy all the way. You can limp wrist it a little bit because there is a bit of friction from some extra lock bar tension that may not need to be there, and we can talk about that at the handle, but it is an easy deployment if you push button it. It does not make much for a light switch maneuver because the flipper tab is so small. Speaking of the flipper tab, it is well placed at right about 90 degrees to the pivot, and it is quite subtle, and so that is a nice thing to see. It actually adds to the design here because of this sweeping up line here. It matches here, here. I find that it's actually quite attractive with the overall look of the knife when closed. So we can't walk past the pivot without talking about this very interesting design feature, this faceted pivot face right here. This is actually a steel face that has been flame colorized right there. It has a ruby ball bearing insert. It's a very interesting look right there. The other side is a steel screw. I really wish that there was something more uniform than this. I kind of wish that this had been done in a more circular design. This is a total design choice, though. It is what it is. It matches their logo, and so I'll give them that. It is uniform, at least, with the large logo. Let's also talk about where that logo is placed. Why there? Shouldn't it be maybe here, or maybe like not there? I just don't know. I don't know what to say. Sometimes design is beyond me. I'll just put it that way. Moving back to the handle, we're going to look at this. This is where the Thunderbird gets its soul, okay? It's designed after the old 50s beautiful cars like the Bel Air and the Thunderbird and these other cars that had these big tail fins, the old Cadillacs and stuff that had these tail fins. This is where I feel like the knife really gains a lot of traction, and I mean that in a literal and a figurative sense, because it has a nice feel in the hand. The ergonomic design actually fits quite well. I will say that these fins are not the most ergonomic design choice in the whole world, especially on a flipper when you have to hold it like this and put those in the palm of your hands every single time. It is, you do feel it, but it is one of those things where it just brings the design together in such a way that you don't really mind it all that much. So it's not quite as bad as, say, the Kaiser Critical was. That was a very difficult knife to do this on, but this is not that uncomfortable. So in hand, it's quite comfortable. My hands are large, and it fits all the way around. That spot back there is generating a very mild hot spot. I have to be totally honest about that. Let's talk about the lock bar here. As you can see, the lock bar is actually internally cut out. So it's not cut out in a traditional way. And what that means is that there's sort of a large amount of lock bar tension. So it's a little bit difficult to disengage the lock without a significant amount of pressure. It also generates a lot of pressure so that the knife action is not maybe as fast as it could be. Now that could maybe be fixed with a little tension adjustment on the lock bar, but as it stands, I think the lock bar tension is a hair too high. Something I don't want to miss is that the handle here is semi-integral. This definitely gets at my sort of love of integral knives. The front scale is semi-integral. The back scale is then affixed to it, but the back spacer is integrated into the top scale. So this really shows off Three Rivers Manufacturing titanium milling abilities and their production capabilities. This is a very well-made knife. The design may not speak to me entirely, but I will say in total, the production and quality here are excellent. So thank you to Marianne and Halpern Titanium and everyone for sending this for review. And as always, take care.